Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Becky Ruffles, and in today's tutorial I'll be taking us on how I made this mini dress with loops at the back and asymmetric peplum at the hem. Now I got my inspiration from this dress, but I decided to give mine a twist, that is with loops at the back instead of zipper. So I'm having loops and zipper from the waistline down to the hip. So without further ado, let's get right into it. On my pattern paper, the first thing I'm doing there is to mark my shoulder divided by 2, then shoulder slope, then I'm taking my chest line over 6 3 quarter. Now the next measurement I'm taking is my bust line of 9.5, then under bust of 13 inches, and then my waistline of 15, and I'm going to roll those lines out and label them accordingly. I'm going to go ahead and label the chest line, the bust line, the under bust line, and then the waist line. Now on the chest line, I went ahead to mark my shoulder of 7 inches, and I'm going to roll a straight line to the shoulder line like that. Next thing I'm going to do it on the chest line is to take my bust circumference divided by 4, and on the bust line also I took my bust circumference divided by 4. Then on the under bust line I took my under bust circumference divided by 4, which gave me 6.75. Then my waistline, I took my waist measurement, which is 6.5. On the waistline, I went ahead to mark the dart intake of 2 inches, which I'll be taking. Then I'm going to connect those lines together. Now the next thing is to get my armhole curve. So from there, I'm just going to go ahead and divide what I have there, starting from my shoulder slope, and divide it by 2. Then at the midpoint I moved in by 0.5. Then I'm going to connect the curve like so. Moving to the bust line, I went ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2 on the bust line down to the waistline, and I'm going to roll the line, connect them together. Now on the waistline, I marked 1 inch on both sides of the line, and I took that same measurement up onto the underbust. Then I connected it on a straight line. I connected on a straight line down to the waist, then here on a slanted line back to the bust line. Then I'm going to go ahead now on the bust line and mark 0.5 inch down, 0.5 inch up on the bust line and connect it back to the apex. That is, the difference between my front waistline and my back waistline is 1 inch. And the next thing I'll be doing now is to bring out the cup. From the bust line, I went down by 1 inch. So I went down there by 1 inch, then I connected it to the dart line on the under bust line. On this other side, I went up by 1.5 inches. And from this other dart, I'm going to reconnect it to that point. Like so. So what I'm doing there is to bring out the cup. Now over here, I'm deciding how off I want the neckline to be. So here I decided to go with 5 inches. So I went down by 5 inches from the shoulder line, and I'm going to just roll it out. Next thing I'm going to do now is to take the same nipple to nipple which I took, which is 3.75, marked out, then plus extra 1 inch. I'm just trying to get where the strap is going to be, so plus extra 1 inch. You can do 1 to 1.5 inches depending on you. And I'm going to connect it back to my chest line like that. Now the next thing I did here, guys, my camera cut off, so I had to refilm this part. So from this point now, which we reconnected, I marked half inch inwards, so that will be where my strap is going to be. So from that half inch which I just marked in, I'll be connecting it back to the bust line like that. So I connected one to the bust line, then I connected another one to the 1 inch mark which I have below the bust line. You can decide to go with either of these two lines for the cup before cutting out, or you curve it like you see me doing. So you can curve from that point below the bust line to the first line like that, which is what I'll later be going in with. Then I'm going to go ahead now and cut out. Now when cutting, ensure to leave like an inch on the side of the your pattern. This is for the purpose of creasing, so that by the time we close the side darts, don't forget we're still going to close the side darts, so we'll have equal measurement on both sides by the time we're done closing, because after creasing it's going to, the measurement over there is going to reduce. So I just slashed through one of the darts on the bust line, then I'm going to place it directly on the other dart line like that. Then I'm going to go ahead and tape down. After taping them down like that, I'm going to go ahead and reconnect the line from the chest line down to the waistline. Okay, so here is what we have. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut out the cup. Then I cut out the darts from the cup, then cut out the neckline which I want, but I'll later be going with the other line, but we'll get back to that. Now here I went ahead to close up the darts which I have after removing the cup from the draft. So I'm going to close it up because I won't be holding darts on it. Okay, over here I decided to go with the second line, the second red line which I have, just to make the neckline a bit low. So that's for the front. Now for the back pattern, I went ahead to divide my shoulder measurements by 2, which is 7. Then I'm just doing the same thing I did at the front, which is taking down my shoulder slope, getting my chest line, and I'm going to roll the line across and label it as the chest line. The next thing is to take my waistline of 14. The difference between my front and back waistline is just 1 inch, hence the reason why I'm taking 14 over here. Now on the chest line, I went ahead to mark my shoulder divided by 2 just to get a straight line to connect to the shoulder line. Then here, just ignore what I'm doing here for now because I'm still going to retake the measurement. Now on the waistline, I did some tightening of 0.75, then I blended it back into the center of the paper like that. Then from that point on the chest line, now from the new line on the chest line, I went ahead to take my bust measurement. Then on the waistline, I took my waist measurements divided by 4 plus 1 inch for that. Then connected them together like that. Now going back to this line, I took the midpoint, I got the midpoint, and I connected it back to the measurements which I have on the chest line. The next thing I'll be doing now from the center of the waist is to take my bust span divided by 2. I wrote the straight line up, then I divided my dart intake by 2, then I marked it on both sides of the line and connected it to 5 inches above, which I marked over there. Now for the back neck, I want it to be very deep, almost getting to my waistline. So I came off from the waistline by 1 inch, and at first I wanted to connect it this way, but I decided to go with my hands to get my desired shape. And then because I'll be adding loop at the back, I don't want my side boobs to be exposed because I'm a bit busty over here. So what I did on the chest line was to move in by 1 inch, mark 1 inch in, and I reconnected it to the curve using the multi-purpose curve this time around. So I'm going with this new line which I just drew. Now I'm going to go cut it out. Okay, so this is what I have for the upper bodies of the back. you can decide to close this dart or you decide to open it up, as long as you have a straight line after closing up. But if you don't have a straight line after closing it up, after closing your dart up, just leave it as it is. Now this is my skirt pattern. I've already drafted this down. Now if you're interested in knowing how I drafted the skirts, just scroll down to the previous video before this, I think 2 videos before this video, and you'll find it there. Now bringing out the upper bodies that I drafted for the front, I'm going to go ahead and place it together with the skirts. Then I'm going to go ahead and tape it down. Now I'm taping it down because I don't want any waist joining on my dress, so it's going to be a dress without a waist joining. Now moving on to the back, this is the center back, so I went ahead to mark my darts, which is 3.75. then I wrote a straight line from the waistline down, almost getting to the hip line. Then I went down by 6 inches for the darts. Then I marked half on both sides of the line, which I drew down, and I connected them like so. I'm going to be bringing the upper bodies, the one for the back, and here I'm about the center back and then the side back. Then I'm going to go ahead and place them together like this, making sure the darts are aligning, the center back align and the side back aligns. And I'm going to go ahead and tape them down. So after taping them down, I had some excess, a little bit of excess on the side back, so I just went ahead to trim it off. After trimming, I give my darts notches on both sides. Then I'm going to go ahead and cut out. Before cutting, I went ahead to pin the hemline of the front and back pattern together. Then I'm going to remove 6 inches, which is going to be for the peplum, because I'll be adding a peplum at the hem. So I'm removing 6 inches for the peplum, and I'm going to cut it out. Now for the cup, what I'm going to do is, because I'll be having some little gathers, I'm going to go ahead and slash and spread. Now I'm going to connect the line, a line from the bust point, the apex, to the part where my strap is going to be. Now for this other line which I'm drawing, you can actually pick any point randomly from the curved part of the cup. Now just ensure that whatever line you're ruling must meet at the point where the strap is going to be. Don't mark it to any part of the neckline except from where the strap is going to be before cutting out. Now I'm going to go ahead and tape down the center, the middle piece of the cup like that. Then you can now spread out as wide as you want, because I don't really want that much of a pleat, so I decided to spread out by 1 inch on both sides. I spread out by 1 inch, then I'm going to tape it down. When you're spreading, make sure you're spreading out nice and you're making sure the paper is well relaxed on the new pattern paper. Then I connected the curves together. I connected the curve together at the hem like this. Just rule a straight line and connect it like that. Then I went ahead to cut out. Now here is what I have for the cup. You can see it's nice, it's coming out nicely. And now I have my pattern ready. Here is my fabric, which I already cut out. So here I added 1 inch seam allowance. Then on the other side, to the side back, I added 1 inch seam allowance, then ½ inch and half inch. Now same thing here at the side fronts over here. I added 1 inch seam allowance, then half inch at the hem and half inch at that part also. Now same thing for the cup. I added 1 inch on the side, then half inch up and half inch down. Now the next thing now is to sew. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove my pattern, then open up the center front like that. Now for the cup, I cut out 4 pieces, then I notched this point. That is the point where my sewing is going to stop. Don't forget the 1 inch which we came down by on the center front is where I just notched just now. So now I have 4 pieces for this. Now what I'll be doing is to gather these lower parts back into the measurement I have on the bodies. So I'm going to gather the cup and drag it. So I'm going to gather and drag. So I drag this to the measurement which I have on the lower bodies of the front. So you can see from the placement here, starting from this midpoint, I went ahead to measure out and make sure that the measurement I have on the cup is the same thing, is meeting up with the one I have on the lower bodies of the front also. So I went ahead to pin it down. So I pinned the center, pinned the sides, going to pin it, and then I'm going to spread out the gathers and also pin. Now I'm going to fix the cup, the 2 cups. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this down, then stitch the other cup also on the other side. Now here is it after stitching. I've stitched both cups. The next thing I'll be doing now is to line it, to fix the lining part of the cup. Now I went ahead to gather this lining part also, then this midpoint which I notched here, then I went ahead to pin opposites just like you see me doing, just to cover up that same line. So I'm going to fold this other side in, then make sure that the notched parts on the center fronts are meeting up together. So I'm going to fix it on both sides. Before I do that, I'm just going to pin this down. Now I'm going to pin. Now when you're pinning, guys, please make sure that I'm making sure that the notched parts, as you can see, I'm pushing the other cup in. So this notched part which I have over here, I'm going to bring them together and pin it down while pushing the other cup inside. Now I'm going to stitch this to the other part. So I've already done that for both sides of the cup, as you can see. This is how the inside looks like. You can see the stitch in between. I have the stitches neatly in between. Now the next thing I'll be doing is to close the center of the cup. So I'm going to push this other cup inside like you see me doing and stitch from where my first seam stopped. So I'm going to go ahead now and stitch this. Now before doing that, before the stitching, I'm going to be fixing the strap which I'll be having. So to create the strap, I went ahead to cut a fabric of 2 inches wide, then I folded it into 2, and then I went ahead to sew in the middle and turn out. Now that I've done that, here is my strap fixed. At that point, don't forget the 0.5 inches which we marked in on the pattern. That is where I fixed the strap. So I'm fixing the strap on both sides here. I went ahead to pin down. Now for the strap, I made it 75 inches long. So I'm just going to remeasure so that we see. I have 60 inches, then I have extra 15 inches after, making it 75 inches long. So I've secured the strap with a pin over there. Now moving on to the center, I'm going to bring the 2 parts together, the lining part and the fabric part, making sure the right side is facing directly on the right side. That is bringing the right side of the fabric together. Then I'm going to pin this point where I have my strap together like this. Then I'm going to pin the center front also. Now making sure the two notched parts are together, and then I'm pushing this other cup which I'm not sewing inward. After pinning, I'm going to go ahead and run a stitch of 0.5 inch. Here it is after stitching. Now when I was stitching, I made sure not to go over the strap, as you can see. So I still have my strap intact without any seam on it. The next thing is to continue from this part. Now I'm going to be pushing in the strap and every other part of the front body is in, and I'm going to go ahead and pin down. So what I'm doing here now is to push the other part of the fabric in. So after pushing them in, I'm going to go ahead and sew and stop at this other part. So this opening which I have here will be the turning point for the fabric. That is where I'll be bringing them out from. So here I went ahead to pin down to the underarm at this point. Then I'll be turning them out from there. So I'm going to go ahead and sew. So after sewing, this is what I have. Now I'm going to go ahead now and notch all the points and trim off any excess fabric which I have, so it won't be bulky, and then it's going to relax around the chest area. Then I drag it out from that opening. So after bringing it out, this is what it looks like. You can see it's already coming out nicely, and I'm arranging it properly before giving it a good press. The next thing I'm going to do now is to insert a cup. The essence of this cup now is to create a support on the chest area. So what I'm going to do now is to place the cup inside, making sure this edge of this cup is relaxing at this point where I have my strap, that is, it's facing the part where the strap is, like this. So when I'm inserting, I'm going to make sure I am inserting the cup this way. Now to do that, I'm just going to fold the cup in because I have a little opening at this point. So I'm just going to roll the cup like this and then insert from this opening and make sure I arrange it the way I want it to be on the inside. That is by bringing one edge of the cup towards this point where I have the strap. And as you can see, it's looking nice. So I've gone ahead to fix it on the other side. Now onto the back piece, I'm going to transfer the dart which I have on the pattern to the fabric. So the first thing I'll be doing is to notch those two parts of the dart. Then I'll go ahead and transfer the darts to the fabric. After transferring the dart on one part of the back, I'm going to go ahead and do the same on the other side and stitch. After joining, here is what I have. The next thing I'll do is to create my loops. Now I decided I want to have 4 loops on both sides. I'll be having 4 on the right side and 4 on the left side. So I decided to make my loop 2 inches wide after opening. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 4 for each part. So here is me cutting it out. Then for the placement, I went down by a half inch to turn in at that point. Then I created a 1 inch distance between each loop. So this is the second. So here I am creating the third and then the fourth spacing. where the loop is going to be. So I already have 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces for the loops. Here are the loops. Now I'm going to give it some notches on the parts where I'll be fixing the loops. Then I folded the loop into two, placed it on those points, and I pinned them down. If you like, you can make your spacing more than 1 inch, depending on how you like it, and you can make your loop as wide as you like, but I decided to go with 1 inch because I really want to have an open back. For the piping at the back, I cut a fabric of width of 1.25 and length of about 20 inches, and I'm going to be using this in form of bias tape to pipe the neck. Now here is both sides after turning. I went ahead to turn. I'm going to give it a good press, and here I'm trimming off the excess thread which I have on the fabric. Now I'm going to join the front piece to the back piece and stitch on the 1 inch seam allowance which I added earlier on when cutting. I'm going to join both sides and stitch down with 1 inch seam allowance. After stitching the sides together, I joined the center back of the dress also together, but I didn't stitch up to the waist. From the waistline, I left an opening of about 8 inches to fix my zipper. To fix the zipper, which I'll be having it, so this opening is about 8 inches. The next thing I did here was to create the asymmetric shape which I wanted at the hem according to the illustration which I was following. So on the left side I went up by 3 inches and I slanted to the other side. So 3 inches, and I'm going to slant to the right side. So using my ruler, I went ahead to roll it down to the right side of the dress and cut out. Now after doing this, I opened up the dress and measured round what I have. So starting from one side, the left side, I measured round and I had about 34, okay, I had 34 and a half inches. Now what I have, the answer which I got, which is 34 and a half, I divided it by 6.28 to cut out the peplum. Now for the peplum, I folded my fabric into 4. I marked down 5 inches, which was the answer I got after dividing the 34 and a half by 6.28. So here I'm just marking out the radius of 5 inches. Then I'm going to connect them together. Then I went down to mark my length, the length of the peplum which I'll be using. So don't forget, the length of the peplum was about 6 inches, was 6 inches which I cut off. So here I'm cutting 6 and a half. The extra half inch which I'm adding is for the hemming allowance. After cutting out the peplum, I opened it up, pinned it on the main bodies and stitched them together. Here is the dress after joining the peplum or the ruffles to it. You can see it's looking nice already. It's coming out nice already. Now I'm going to hem the peplum, that is the lower part of the peplum. I'm going to turn it in twice. Here is how the front looks like. Here is how the back looks like. And here I'm going to be fixing my zipper. And that's all for today's class. Now if you enjoyed this tutorial, kindly give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.